Hello, I'm Angelina, and welcome back to another episode of our interviews. As always, feel free to open up the transcript or the description to better follow along and learn more about our guest speakers. Hello, how have you been today?
Fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing good as well. Do you mind if I ask you a couple of questions regarding your profession and how you've been doing?
Certainly, go ahead, please.
Okay, so first, could you sort of walk us through your experience in engineering and sort of your background and how you've gotten to where you are today?
That's, I became I became an engineering student 50 years ago. So that was a long time ago, right? Yeah. So I was born in India, and my family was mostly people in administration. The men were mostly almost all in administration or law. The women at that time were basically, housewives. Okay. And in on July 20th, 1969, a huge event took place when uh, when Apollo 11 lander landed on the moon, and I was just about 12 years old then, not even, and I it was fascinating. And at that point, I decided that I want to do something like that. And actually, in my family, there wasn't anyone who was an engineer. So really did not, or a scientist even for that matter. Not completely true, but there was one scientist, but he was a biologist. And they didn't really quite know what to advise me. But a couple of years later, I realized that I wanted to become an electronics engineer. And so when the time came, I uh, took part in an university entrance examination, and uh, I chose to study electronics engineering. This was at an institute. Later, it became an IIT. Okay, so I studied there for 5 years. It was a 5-year program in those days, 5-year bachelor's degree program. And then I decided I really did not want to become an electronics engineer, but I wanted to study and understand Maxwell's equations, which govern all electromagnetic phenomena. I just became fascinated by them. So I went on for a master's and a PhD at the University of Utah in Salt Lake City. And after that, I became a postdoc at Penn State, where a few years later, they offered me a faculty position. And now I am Evan Pugh University professor of engineering, science, and mechanics at Penn State. So this was from 1969. It was, well, uh, something like a 55-year-old journey, 55-year long journey. Yeah.
So you
So far.
mentioned, oh, thank you. Yeah, so you mentioned that you were a faculty member for Penn State. Sort of what sort of things have you done like as a faculty member or like during your time at Penn State that sort of is meant to like help improve academics and like research for engineering students?
Yeah. So at a major American university, a faculty member has three major tasks. The first task is to disseminate old knowledge, and that is primarily done to undergraduate students, although some graduate students also, but that's the primary focus there is on undergraduate education. Okay. The second task is to create new knowledge, that is research. And the third task is to teach others how to create new knowledge. So the third part, the focus is primarily on graduate students. However, in the last 15, 20 years, there has been a change. Undergraduate students are also becoming active in research at more and more universities. And that is because we have progressed in our experimental facilities, in our computational facilities, to an extent that the motivated undergraduate student can also take part in research activities. So I have done all of these three.
What part of like sort of teaching or being a faculty member for you is like particularly rewarding?
Oh, certainly, certainly. You really, in my opinion, you can't really be a very good researcher if you are not going to emphasize teaching. Because when you instruct students, that's when your own understanding becomes clearer. Okay. So this is not that I'm teaching students and therefore they're benefiting from me. I'm benefiting too from teaching. Okay. I understand certain topics better. Also, when I create new courses or when I change older courses, or inject new material in them, okay, that benefits me as in order to do so. I have to understand certain new topics so well that I should be able to teach them, right? Okay. So that helps me in research as well. And of course, when you have motivated students, then it's a joy to teach them because they are eager to ask questions. Okay. And in answering those questions, the instructor learns a lot.
So for like high school students like me who are interested in sort of studying engineering or like the sciences in the future, do you have any
Mhm.
recommendations or advice for like what we should be doing as a high schooler to like better prepare us in the future?
Okay. Well, um, the landscape has changed in the last 10 years, um, partly because of COVID, and actually partly because not of COVID, but for other reasons. I would have given you a different type of advice. Basically, I would have said, what you have to learn to do is to become a lifelong learner. Research, not the research one thinks of in writing papers and journals and so on and so forth, but research meaning actively finding out new information and making use of it. Okay. Research should become a part of your life, regardless of what you do professionally or personally. It should become part of your life. And the best way to learn to do research is to actually do it. The issue that students would face is their instructors in high school are not particularly geared to help them do research. Okay, they may not have the apparatus, they may themselves not have the necessary training. Okay, and usually not involved with research. So that's perhaps not very satisfying. Okay. Uh, so what should be done is find a professor at a university close to you and start interacting with that person. So this person could be a friend of your parents. This person could be a friend of your, uncles, aunts, whatever, relatives. Um, this person could be a neighbor, depending on where you live. Okay. So make friends with this person and try to understand what they do. And and after some time you may say, can you give me a problem to solve? Okay. And they will, in many cases, they will give you a problem to solve, which will not be too difficult. It will give you some idea of what research means. However, in the last 10 years, the landscape has changed. There have been well publicized cases where very young people, high school students, etc., were were treated badly on university campuses. And the second is that, well, COVID created a huge problem. So universities became responsible for the welfare of their own students, right? And to have them be responsible for the welfare of students who are not their own students, high school students, was perhaps a big burden on them. So they actually have actively encouraged, or rather, I should say the other way. They have actively discouraged high school students to be on university campuses doing research with faculty members. Okay, this is not something that is encouraged. It used to be encouraged. Okay, so what the students can do is, even so, to find out some people, make friends with them. Okay, make family friends with them, and then see if, for example, on a Saturday or a Sunday, during the weekend, you could spend an hour with them, but do it regularly. Do it every week for, say, 30 weeks or so. Okay. And, and ask them, shadow them a little bit, ask them what kind of work they do, what kind of problems they're solving, what kind of problems they find interesting. So you learn about research by osmosis. Now, some undergraduates, high school students will be fortunate that their own parents are involved in research. In that case, I don't have to say much. You see, yeah, they have an inside track.
Sort of on that note, on like research, are there any areas of research you find particularly interesting that you've done or like that other people have done in like the field of science?
Oh, that's huge. They're wonderful things. In fact, as I have grown older, my one regret is that I don't have 3 or 4 lives to live at the same time. No, no, no. What's been happening in science, engineering, medicine, technology, mathematics, uh, after the early 1990s, for example, is nothing short of a revolution. It's some fantastic. There are new problems that can be solved. Okay, there are old problems that can be solved in new ways. Okay, and then you can also create new problems by mixing old and other new problems. You can transcend disciplines. You can find problems that require a knowledge of both biology and physics, for example. Okay, okay, and you can find examples of problems where you look at techniques like using artificial neural networks, artificial intelligence, machine learning, um, these kinds of what should I say, not very formal ways of solving problems. Okay, formal disciplinary ways of solving problems, but by solving problems, by looking at solutions of, you can then extract information and solve problems that are very difficult to solve. Okay, so that has just simply revolutionized landscape for research. Also, our computational facilities are marvelous, and they keep on improving. Okay, when I became a graduate student, I used to use punch cards. Yes, yeah, you may want to look up your punch cards or Hollerith cards, HOLLERITH cards for computation. Okay, and these were gigantic mainframes. They would occupy, a huge room, like 30 feet by 20 feet. something like, and today all computing power is probably available in 1/4 of an iPhone, maybe, maybe even less. Okay. So this gives you an idea of how computational resources have simply transformed. Okay. And therefore the happened is that our apparatuses now, yeah, we can be experimental works is that nobody would have thought possible 30, 40 years ago. Okay. When I was a student, they used to talk a lot about something called a vector network analyzer. And I think in 1985 or so, a vector network analyzer made by Hewlett Packard used to cost upwards of $80,000. That's a lot of money. There was a lot of money in those days. A lot of money in those days. Today, you can about $60 or $70 and you can buy them on Amazon. You see, so this is really remarkable. And you know what's amazing is that uh, also is that information is so easily accessible now. You don't have to actually go to a library. You don't have to go to a library and hunt for information in stacks of books, right? So for a researcher, this is paradise. Okay. So this is why I think young people should make research a part of their lives. It's just so easy to do. A meeting in a town hall, and let us suppose that the director of whatever security of the town says something. You can immediately on your iPhone or whatever you have, you can immediately see if this person is giving you the correct statistics, right? You can track it you can track it immediately. And you say, no, that is not right. Or, yes, I support you. That is how it should be, right? Whichever way it goes. All right. So research should be a part of lifestyle.
Okay, thank you. And I was wondering if you had any like last pieces of advice or like messages you'd like to share with like students.
Yeah, well, there are a few things that I would like to mention to students. Reflecting back on a career for this long, I find that was that long. I find that you have to be passionate. That's important. Don't do anything half-heartedly. So there used to be a saying that I heard for the first time when I came to United States, which is that if it is worth doing, it is worth doing well. And that, I think, is something important to always keep in mind. Okay. The second thing is that whatever you do, examine in advance, or at least think about in advance, and choose the right path accordingly, the right activities accordingly. Okay. Don't be pulled into something unknowingly. So examine not only the current information that is available to you, but also project what could happen in 20, 30 years time. I know that's difficult to project. It is difficult to project, but at least think about it. Okay, that's important to do so. Third thing I would say is that there are certain things that are that do not, there are invariants. Okay, if you know fundamentals of any topic, that will help you when you have new types of problems to solve. So don't be superficial. Go in depth. And going in depth today is far easier than it has ever been. So go in depth, because the things that are invariant will guide you when you are in unfamiliar terrain. And above all, try and be happy. If you are unhappy, and I mean deeply unhappy, if you are deeply unhappy, don't do it. Try to be happy.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing your experience. It was very insightful.
You are very welcome. And I hope you find a good university next year and have a good time there. Okay. Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.